kitchen light was already off when Elisa entered. She always waited for this moment, the instant when the voices fell silent, the footsteps faded, and the Montero mansion plunged into that thick silence that smelled of dessert and expensive wine. Her rubber shoes made no sound on the marble floor. It was as if she herself made no sound at all, as if the world had learned not to notice her, and she had learned not to complain about it. Elisa was 24 years old, with rough hands and a face that no one would describe as beautiful or ugly, simply invisible. She was the type of woman who blended into corners, who crossed entire rooms unnoticed, who could die there and someone would only notice because of the piled-up dishes. She had worked at the mansion for 3 years. She was a kitchen helper, the lowest in the hierarchy of employees. She chopped vegetables, washed pots, scrubbed the pantry floor, carried fruit crates. When the head cook, Donna Carmen, needed someone to blame, it was always Elisa. When the broth lacked salt, it was her fault. When the oven burned the bread, it was her fault for not watching. When a glass broke, it was Elisa, always Elisa, even when Elisa wasn't around. That night, she carefully opened the refrigerator. The Montero family's dinner had been lavish. Roast pork loin with herbs, mushroom risotto, salad with caramelized walnuts, apple pie with homemade ice cream. There were bits and pieces of everything left over. The leftovers stayed there in glass containers with lids, labeled with the date, waiting to be forgotten until someone threw them away. No one in the family ate leftovers. It was a matter of principle, although no one called it that. Simply put, the previous day's food no longer existed for the Monteros. It was as if it lost its value the instant midnight arrived. Elisa took a small plate, not one of the pretty ones, an unmarked plate that sat at the back of the cupboard, the kind of plate only she used, and served herself some rice, a piece of cold pork loin, and a spoonful of vegetables. She sat on the wooden stool next to the stainless steel counter, that creaky stool, the same stool where she spent hours peeling potatoes throughout the day. He ate slowly, in silence, like someone praying. It wasn't just hunger, it was also loneliness. That moment, alone in the dark kitchen, her mouth full of food that no one else wanted, was the closest Elisa came to feeling that she existed within that house. Because during the day she was a shadow, a tool, a piece that functioned, and because it functioned, no one needed to look at. She chewed slowly. She savored each bite with almost religious attention. Not for pleasure, but because that was the only moment of the day that belonged entirely to her. There were no orders, no rush, no Donna Carmen shouting, no other employees whispering. It was just Elisa and the silence. And the leftover food. She didn't know, there was no way she could have known, that someone was watching her. Lucas Montero stood in the dark hallway that connected the bedroom wing to the kitchen. He had gone downstairs. Insomnia. It had happened frequently since he returned from Europe, where he had spent 4 years, 2 doing a master's degree in economics in London, 2 working at an investment fund in Zurich. He had returned 3 weeks ago, summoned by his father, the patriarch Enrique Montero, who was ill and needed his eldest son to take over the family business. Lucas obeyed. He always obeyed. He was the heir. That was his role, to obey while everyone thought he was in charge. He saw Elisa sitting on the stool, bent over her plate, eating with that silent slowness that seemed like a ritual. The refrigerator light was still half open, casting a bluish glow on her thin shoulders, on the crumpled apron she hadn't yet taken off. Lucas stood still, not out of malicious curiosity nor out of contempt. He stood still because something in that scene struck him in a way he hadn't expected. Perhaps it was loneliness. He knew that loneliness. He knew the feeling of eating alone in an overpriced apartment, of looking at food without hunger, of chewing out of obligation. But Elisa chewed with a kind of sad gratitude. It was different. It was like watching someone find beauty where there should be no beauty at all. He recoiled. He went back to the room without getting the water. He lay down on the overly wide bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to understand why that image, a woman eating leftovers in the dark, had stuck in him like a thorn. The next morning, Lucas went down for breakfast. The table was set as always, linen tablecloth, white china with gold rims, fruit cut into geometric shapes, natural juices in crystal pitchers, fresh bread, imported jams, butter with pink salt. His mother, Helena, was already seated, leafing through something on her tablet. His younger brother, Raphael, 22, ate distractedly while typing on his cell phone. His father didn't come down. He was having one of his bad days, as the nurse called them, when the pain kept him in bed. Lucas sat down, poured himself some coffee, and watched the activity in the kitchen through the crack in the door. He saw Donna Carmen giving orders. He saw a blonde girl, Jessica, the maid, organizing the tray. And he saw, in the background, almost hidden behind a pile of fruit and vegetable crates, Elisa. She was carrying a crate that was too heavy for her body. Nobody was helping her. Nobody was looking at her. "Who is that?" Lucas asked, pointing with his chin. Helena looked up from her tablet, disinterested. "Which one?" "The one in the back. The one carrying the boxes." "Ah, She's the assistant. Eloisa, something like that. She does the heavy lifting in the kitchen. Since when? I don't know. Years. Helena returned to the tablet. Why? For nothing. But it was nothing. Lucas didn't know what it was yet, but he knew it was nothing. The following days passed within the relentless routine of the mansion. Lucas spent his mornings in his father's office trying to decipher spreadsheets, contracts, powers of attorney, an empire of numbers that Enrique Montero had built with his own hands and which now seemed like a labyrinth without a map. In the afternoon, he met with lawyers, accountants, and farm managers. At night, he dined with his family in silence because Helena liked silence during meals. She said that conversation at the table was for uneducated people, although what she really meant was that she had nothing to talk about with anyone there. And every night, around midnight, Lucas would come downstairs, not to the kitchen, to the hallway. He would stand there, in the dark, and watch Elisa eat her leftovers on the wooden stool under the bluish light of the half-open refrigerator. It was wrong. He knew it was wrong. It was invasive. It was strange. It was the kind of thing that, if discovered, would be interpreted in the worst possible way. But he couldn't stop, because every night the scene was the same and, at the same time, different. Sometimes she ate faster, as if she were very hungry. Sometimes she hardly ate, just sat there looking at her plate as if staring at an unanswered question. One night, he saw her cry, without a sound, without a sob. Just tears streaming down her face as she chewed, as if crying and hunger were the same thing. That night, Lucas returned to his room and didn't sleep. He sat in the armchair by the window, looking at the garden illuminated by spotlights that no one appreciated it, and he thought that perhaps his family's problem wasn't wealth. It was blindness. A chosen blindness, cultivated, protected with fences and gates and white uniforms. The blindness of those who decide that certain people are not people. They are functions. They are verbs. To clean, to cook, to carry, to obey. Never names, never faces, never hunger, never tears. He thought of Elisa crying silently in the dark, eating food that her family considered garbage, and he felt a shame so deep it hurt in his chest. 3 days later, something happened that changed the course of everything. It was a Wednesday. Helena had organized a lunch for 12 guests, businessmen, their wives, a state representative, and his assistant. The kitchen had been in a state of chaos since 6 a.m. Donna Carmen was shouting. Jessica was running around. Elisa was peeling, cutting, washing, scrubbing, and carrying things. At 11, when the first course was almost ready, an appetizer of carpaccio with capers and lemon zest, the unexpected happened. Donna Carmen tripped on the non-slip mat that wasn't so non-slip after all, lost her balance, and spilled the entire platter of carpaccio on the floor. The silence that followed lasted only 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Donna Carmen looked at the floor. She looked at the clock. She looked at Elisa. You. Carmen's voice was sharp as glass. You didn't hold the serving dish when I asked you to. Elisa said nothing. She hadn't been asked to hold any serving dish. She was on the other side of the kitchen, peeling a pumpkin, but she knew it was no use talking. It never did. Because of you, we're going to be embarrassed in front of Mrs. Helena's guests, Carmen continued, her voice rising. You're, useless. Not even good for the basics. I should have fired that creature a long time ago. Elisa swallowed. Not saliva. Something bigger. Something she had swallowed so many times that it had become familiar. Excuse me, Mrs. Carmen, he said softly. Sorry, it doesn't fill you up and it doesn't make carpaccio. Now clean this floor and pray that I can redo this in time. Elisa knelt down and began to clean. The carpaccio was raw, thin as paper, and stuck to the floor. She cleaned with her hands because the cloth was far away, and she knew that getting up to get it would be interpreted as laziness. While she was cleaning, Jessica walked past her without looking. The other helper, a young man named Marcos, swerved around her as if Elisa were a puddle in the way. It was at that moment that Lucas entered the kitchen. He had come to fetch a bottle of water for the office, an excuse he had been using more and more in recent days, and he saw Elisa on the floor, on her knees, picking up slices of raw meat with her bare hands, while Donna Carmen retraced her steps, cursing through her teeth. Lucas stopped. Everyone stopped. The presence of a Montero in the kitchen was as rare as snow in the Cerrado. Helena never went in there. Rafael didn't even know where it was. Enrique, in his healthier days, would sometimes show up to compliment a dish, but always with the detachment of someone visiting a zoo and finding the animals amusing. What's going on here? Lucas's voice was calm, but it had a weight that made Donna Carmen raise her head immediately. Nothing, Dr. Lucas. Just a minor accident. We're already taking care of it. Lucas looked at Elisa on the floor. He looked at her hands, stained with oil and raw meat. He looked at her face, and for the first time their eyes met. Elisa's eyes were brown, large, and held something Lucas couldn't name at that moment. It wasn't fear, it wasn't anger. It was a kind of resignation so ancient it had become part of the landscape, as if she expected nothing from anyone, and therefore was never disappointed by anything. "Get up," said Lucas. Elisa blinked. "Stand up," he repeated, and this time he held out his hand. The entire kitchen froze. Donna Carmen opened her mouth but said nothing. Jessica held the dish towel against her chest like a shield. Marcos pretended to be busy with something in the oven. Elisa looked at Lucas's outstretched hand as if it were an object from another planet. A clean hand with trimmed nails, a gold watch on its wrist, a hand that had never washed a pan, never peeled a potato, never picked up raw meat from the floor. That hand was there, offered to her, and Elisa didn't know what to do with it. She stood up on her own, without accepting the hand, not out of pride, because she didn't know how one accepted such a thing. No one had ever offered. Lucas let his hand fall. He looked at Donna Carmen. "How many people work in this kitchen?" "4, Doctor." "And this girl is responsible for cleaning the floor while the other 3 just stand around?" Donna Carmen choked on her words. It was she who... "I saw the dish fall. I was walking down the hallway." Lucas wasn't walking down the hallway, but he said with a conviction that clung to no rebuttal, "It wasn't her fault. It was an accident. Accidents don't need anyone to blame." Donna Carmen blushed, not from shame, from suppressed anger, but she swallowed, just as Elisa swallowed. Everyone in that house swallowed something. The difference was that some swallowed humiliation and others swallowed pride. Lucas left the kitchen without his water bottle. Elisa stood still, her hands dirty, her heart beating differently, in a way she didn't recognize because it had been too long since anyone had seen her. Not looked at her, seen her. There's a huge difference. Looking is a mechanical act. Seeing is an act of humanity. And Lucas, at that moment, had seen Elisa. For the first time in 3 years, someone inside that house had recognized that she was a person. She washed her hands. She went back to work. She didn't say anything to anyone, but something inside her had shifted, a piece that had been stuck for so long she'd forgotten it existed. Something between her chest and throat, something that wasn't hope, but also wasn't resignation anymore, something that still didn't have a name. That night, when she went downstairs to eat her leftovers, Elisa found something unexpected on the wooden stool. A plate, not one of those unmarked plates that sat at the back of the cupboard. A white porcelain plate with a gold rim, a plate from the Montero family. And on it, carefully arranged, was fresh food. Not leftovers. A piece of warm pork loin, fluffy rice, grilled vegetables, a slice of artisanal bread. Beside it, a cloth napkin. And on the napkin, a handwritten note in firm handwriting but slightly slanted to the right. "You deserve to eat like a human being, not like a shadow." Elisa held the note with both hands. She read it 3 times. On the 4th time, the letters blurred because she was crying. Not her usual silent crying. A cry that came from somewhere so deep she didn't even know it still existed. She sat on the stool. She looked at the plate. She ran her finger along the golden rim. And she ate. This time, not like someone praying, like someone who believes. In the days that followed, the plate appeared every night, always with fresh food, always with a cloth napkin, never again with a note, as if the first one had said everything that needed to be said. Elisa didn't know for sure who was leaving the plate, although she knew. You knew in the same way you know the sun will rise. Not because someone explained it, but because it makes sense. She didn't speak to Lucas. She didn't seek him out, didn't thank him, didn't try to cross paths with him in the hallways. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how. Her whole life had been built on the premise that she shouldn't take up too much space, shouldn't speak too loudly, shouldn't want too much, shouldn't exist too much. A thank you would require her to present herself to him as a human being who feels and speaks and exists, and that was as terrifying as jumping off a cliff. Lucas didn't approach her directly either, but he started paying attention. He noticed that Elisa arrived at 5:30 in the morning, before everyone else, that she left after 10 at night, always the last one, that she wore the same worn-out pair of shoes every day, that she tied her hair with a rubber band, the kind used to hold money together because she probably didn't have a hair clip. She had a way of tilting her head when she heard something that interested her, a slight tilt to the left, like a curious bird. She would hum softly when she thought no one was listening, always the same melody he didn't recognize, something that sounded like an old lullaby, perhaps invented, perhaps remembered from a time when someone used to lull her to sleep. He also noticed how the others treated her. Donna Carmen used her as a scapegoat for everything. Jessica ignored her with that specific cruelty of someone who pretends the other doesn't exist. Marcos, the helper, sometimes made jokes about her, jokes that Elisa pretended not to hear, but that Lucas saw hit her face like invisible slaps. And there was something worse than all of that, the naturalness with which it happened. Nobody thought it was wrong. Nobody thought anything. Elisa was simply the lowest rung, and rungs don't complain when they're stepped on. One Saturday afternoon, Lucas found her in the back garden. Not in the ornamental gardens that Helena kept immaculate for photos. The back garden, where the clotheslines, the trash, and the empty crates were. Elisa was sitting on a wooden crate with a book in her lap. An old, soft-cover yellowed book. She read with such intense concentration that she didn't hear him approaching. "What are you reading?" Elisa jumped. She instinctively closed the book, as if she had been caught doing something forbidden. "Excuse me, doctor. I was on my break. I didn't ask if you were on break. I asked what you were reading." She looked at him with that mixture of fear and surprise that he was beginning to recognize, as if every interaction with another human being was a potential threat. It's a novel. Wuthering Heights. Emily Bronte. "Do you know him?" "I read it when I was 15. I thought it was too intense." He paused. "Do you like to read?" It was a simple question, perhaps the simplest question in the world. But Elisa reacted as if he had asked something deeply personal, something no one had ever asked before, because, in fact, no one had ever asked before. "I like it," she said, and the word came out so softly that it almost disappeared in the wind. "What else do you like?" She remained silent for so long that Lucas thought she wouldn't answer. Then, as if confessing a secret, "About studying. I was in college, literature. I stopped in the third semester because it wasn't working out. But I wanted to finish. Someday. Why didn't it work? Because life wouldn't allow it." It was an answer that said everything without saying anything. Lucas understood. He understood that life was a euphemism for poverty, for impossible choices, for the cruel mathematics of those who must decide between eating and studying, between paying rent and paying tuition. "How long have you been off work?" 2 years. And he continues reading. "I'll continue." And for the first time, something resembling a smile crossed Elisa's face. Not an open smile. A shy, almost embarrassed smile, as if smiling were a luxury she couldn't afford. "I pick up books at the used bookstore, the ones nobody wants, the cheapest ones. Sometimes I find good things among the discarded ones." Lucas sat down on another crate, facing her. Elisa stiffened. Having a Montero sitting on a crate in the backyard, talking to her, was so surreal that she almost looked around to check for hidden cameras. "My father has a library," Lucas said. "On the second floor of the East Wing. He hasn't been in there for years. It has over 2,000 books. If you want, you can borrow some." Elisa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Doctor, I don't..." "Lucas, my name is Lucas. I can't go to the family library." "Why not?" "Because I'm the kitchen assistant." "And kitchen assistants don't read? That's not it? It's just, your place is your place, and mine is mine. That's how things work here. Things work this way here because nobody ever questioned it. It's not because it's right." Elisa looked at him as if he had said something in a language she understood but didn't believe anyone else could speak. Lucas held her gaze, and in that moment, in that backyard smelling of damp earth and laundry soap, something happened between them that wasn't romance, wasn't attraction, wasn't anything that could be filmed or described in a sentence. It was recognition. Two human beings, recognizing each other in their different but equally profound solitudes. Lucas stood up. "The library is unlocked. Third door on the right in the East Wing hallway. If anyone asks, say I authorized it." He left. Elisa sat on the crate, clutching her old book to her chest, and felt something so immense it couldn't be contained within her body. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something prior to love. It was the realization that someone considered her worthy of something more than leftovers. Elisa didn't go to the library that night, nor the next. It took her 4 days to muster the courage. On the 5th night, after everyone was asleep, she climbed the stairs like a thief, her heart pounding in her ears, and found the door. It was unlocked, just as he had said. She went inside. The library was the size of her entire apartment, the tiny studio she shared with her mother in a suburban neighborhood 20 kilometers away. Dark wood bookshelves stretched from floor to ceiling. There was a sliding staircase, the kind she'd only seen in movies. There were leather armchairs. There was a smell, that smell of old books, of yellowed pages, of time preserved on paper. Elisa closed her eyes, and he was inspired and felt, for the first time in years, in a place that felt right. She ran her fingers along the spines. She chose a book, then another, then another. She wanted to take them all. She wanted to live inside them. She wanted that smell to linger on her clothes, her hair, her skin. She took only one, Persuasion, by Jane Austen, because the title seemed to speak to her, because her whole life someone had persuaded her that she was less, and perhaps, she thought, perhaps it was time to be persuaded otherwise. She left the library with the book hidden under her apron. She went down the stairs in the dark, and she almost bumped into Raphael. Lucas's younger brother was in the hallway, returning from somewhere, probably the garage where he used to smoke in secret. He looked at Elisa with that expression she knew so well, the expression of someone looking at a piece of furniture out of place. "What are you doing up here?" I came to get a book from the library. Mr. Lucas gave me permission." Raphael raised an eyebrow. Did Lucas authorize the maid to use Dad's library? The word maid pierced Elisa like a sharp knife. Not because it was new. On the contrary, it was a very old word in her life. But because it came after days when she had begun to forget that this was what she was to that family. Maid, not Elisa, not the girl who read Bronte and Austen, not the woman who dropped out of college and dreamed of returning. Maid. "Lucas has been acting weird ever since he got back," Raphael said, more to himself than to her. "It must be Europe. Everyone comes back kind of socialist." He walked past her and disappeared down the hallway. Elisa went down the stairs with the book pressed against her chest, and the sharp edge of the word maid still spun inside her. In the following days, the routine changed almost imperceptibly. Elisa read at night, after eating. She would return the book and pick up another. She never saw Lucas in the library. He made sure not to be there when she went, as if he wanted to give her that space without his presence, without her feeling indebted, without any awkwardness. It was a rare kindness, the kindness of someone who gives without expecting anything in return. But they crossed paths during the day, in the hallways, in the kitchen, in the garden. And each encounter was a small, silent earthquake. There were no long conversations. Sometimes just a nod. Sometimes a brief question, "Did you like the book?" And an even briefer answer, "Very much." Sometimes just a glance. But each glance carried the weight of everything that went unsaid. Helena was the first to notice, not what was happening, because nothing was happening. Not in the way people imagine when they think of romance. There were no touches, no declarations, nothing that could be photographed or reported. What Helena noticed was a change in her son. Lucas was different, more present, more attentive, more human, if one can say that about someone who had always been formally correct, but emotionally distant. He asked about the employees. He wanted to know how much they earned, if they had days off, if they had health insurance. He wanted to know why the kitchen assistant worked 16 hours a day. "Since when have you been interested in employee payroll?" Helena asked during dinner. Ever since I realized that there are people in this house who work harder than any of us and earn less than the cost of a bottle of the wine we're drinking." Helena put down the cutlery. "Lucas, dear, the employees are well treated. They have a salary, they have food, they have... The kitchen helper eats the leftovers from our dinner, Mom, in the middle of the night, alone, in secret. Because nobody thinks to offer her a decent meal during her shift." The silence that fell over the dining table was the kind that precedes storms. "How do you know that?" Helena asked, and there was not concern in her voice, but something akin to offense. As if Lucas knowing that was a betrayal of the class. "Because I pay attention, because I look at the people who live under our roof, because I don't pretend they're invisible. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest." Raphael, who was watching the scene with malicious amusement, intervened. "He's been talking to the maid, Mom. That Elisa girl. The other day she was in Dad's library. She said Lucas gave permission." Helena looked at Lucas with an expression he had known since childhood, the expression of someone constructing a dangerous narrative in their head. "Lucas, I hope you're not..." "I'm not upset at all, Mom. I authorized an employee to borrow a book. If that's scandalous, that's not my problem." He got up from the table and left. Helena remained there, with the linen napkin in her lap, certain that something was happening that she needed to control before it spiraled out of control. The next day, Elisa was called to Helena's office. She had never been in that room before. It was decorated in shades of beige and cream, with fresh flowers in a crystal vase and a perfume so strong that Elisa felt dizzy. Helena was sitting behind a desk that probably cost more than everything Elisa owned in the world. "Sit down," said Helena, pointing to a chair that was deliberately lower than hers. Elisa sat down. "How long have you been in this house?" 3 years, ma'am. And she always worked well. We never had any serious complaints. Mrs. Carmam says you're hardworking?" Elisa didn't answer. She knew that Donna Carmam had never said that before. "But I need to be direct with you. My son Lucas is a kind man. Sometimes too kind. He has a soft heart and tends to get involved in causes that aren't his responsibility. I need you to understand one thing very clearly. Lucas is the heir to this family. He will marry someone of the same social standing. He will manage his father's business. He will continue what we have built. And nothing, absolutely nothing, can interfere with that." Elisa understood. She understood with the same speed with which she understood when Donna Carmen was about to yell. With the same clarity with which she understood that the world had rules that weren't made to protect her. "I don't want to bother you, ma'am. I just work here." Great. Then let's continue like this. Helena smiled. It was the coldest smile Elisa had ever seen. You can go. Elisa got up, left the office, went downstairs, entered the kitchen, excused herself to Donna Carmen to go to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried. She cried because Helena was right. She cried because the world was right. She cried because she was the kitchen helper and he was the heir, and between them there was an abyss that no borrowed book, no porcelain plate, no note could bridge. That night the plate was there as always. Fresh food, cloth napkin, gilded rim. Elisa looked at it for a long moment. Then she picked up the plate, washed it, put it away in the family cupboard, and ate the usual leftovers from the unmarked plate, sitting on the creaky stool. When Lucas went downstairs and saw that the plate was untouched, put away and clean, he understood that something had happened. And when, the next day, he noticed that Elisa looked away every time he passed through the kitchen, he was certain. He went to talk to his mother. What did you say to her? Helena didn't pretend not to understand. I told the truth. That you have a path to follow and that this girl is not part of it. This girl has a name. Everyone has a name, Lucas. Not everyone is relevant. The phrase hit Lucas like a punch, not because of its cruelty. He knew his mother's cruelty. It was cold and calculating, like everything about her. What struck him was its naturalness, the absolute conviction that certain people simply didn't matter, that natural hierarchies existed, that the world was divided between those who were relevant and those who weren't, and that this was as immutable as the Earth's rotation. You're wrong, Lucas said. I am protecting this family. You're protecting an idea of family that no longer exists. Dad is dying, Mom. Raphael doesn't care about anything that doesn't fit on a cell phone screen. And I spent 4 years in Europe trying to be the son you wanted, and I came back realizing I don't know who I am. Nobody in this house knows who they are. Nobody in this house even knows the name of the woman who prepares the food we eat. Her name is irrelevant. Her name is Elisa, and she is more dignified than most of the people who sit at our table. Lucas left. Helena was left alone in the office, and for the first time in a long time, her hands trembled. Elisa tried to return to invisibility. He tried to be the shadow he once was, but it was like trying to forget a color after having seen it. Lucas had seen it, and now she knew it existed. And knowing that it exists, after years of believing it doesn't, is the kind of thing that doesn't fade. She continued working. She remained silent. She continued eating leftovers. But at night she read the books she had already borrowed, and on each page she found pieces of herself she didn't know existed. She found Anne Elliot, the protagonist of Persuasion, who had also been persuaded to give up on a love, and she recognized herself in her with an intensity that hurt. A week passed, then 2. The porcelain plate never reappeared. Elisa and Lucas didn't speak to each other. The mansion returned to its routine of silence and appearances, until Enrique Montero, the patriarch, had a breakdown. It was a Tuesday morning. The nurse called Helena. Helena called Lucas. Lucas called the ambulance. Raphael slept through it all, or pretended to sleep, which amounted to the same thing. Enrique was taken to the hospital, stabilized, and brought back 2 days later with a prognosis that no one said aloud but that everyone understood. It was a matter of months. The house changed. Helena became quieter, more controlling, more obsessed with keeping everything running as if nothing were happening. Raphael disappeared more and more, and Lucas carried the weight of everything. The business, his father's health, his mother who didn't cry, his brother who didn't show up. One night, after a particularly brutal day, a meeting with the doctors, a call from the bank, a contract that needed to be signed urgently and that he barely understood, Lucas went down to the kitchen, not to keep watch, not to leave dishes, to breathe. And he found Elisa. She was sitting on the stool with an open book, but not reading, just sitting there, looking at her own hands. When she saw him, she jumped up. Sorry, I was already... Sit down. She hesitated. Please, he said. And the word please, coming from a Montero addressed to her, was so unexpected that Elisa sat down in sheer astonishment. Lucas sat down on the floor, on the kitchen floor. He leaned his back against the stainless steel cabinet and stayed there, staring at the ceiling. My father's going to die, he said. Not to Elisa, to the ceiling, to the universe, to anyone who wanted to hear. Elisa didn't say, I'm sorry. She didn't say, everything will be all right. She didn't say any of the things one usually says at times like these. She just stayed there, present, silent. And that silence, the silence of someone who stays without demanding words, without offering cheap solutions, without trying to fix what can't be fixed, was the most comforting thing Lucas had experienced in weeks. They stayed like that for a long time. She on the stool, he on the floor, 2 lonely people in a dark kitchen, 2 invisible beings who, for a moment, were visible to each other. "Thank you," said Lucas, after a silence that could have lasted minutes or hours. "For what reason?" "For staying. I didn't do anything. He did it. He stayed." Elisa felt something open up inside her chest, like a ripe fruit finally breaking open. She wanted to say so much. She wanted to say that the porcelain plates were the most beautiful thing anyone had ever done for her, that the note was kept inside Bronte's book between pages 56 and 57, and that she read it every night, that the conversation in the garden was the first time in years that someone had asked her what she liked, that the library was the most beautiful place she had ever seen, that he was the most beautiful person she had ever seen, not beautiful in face, but beautiful in being. But I said nothing, because some things are too big for words. Lucas got up from the floor. "Elisa," it was the first time he had said her name like that, not as information, but as if her name were an important word. "I'm going to fix a few things in this house. Maybe people won't like it, but I'm going to do it." She nodded. She didn't know what he meant, but she believed him. He left. She stayed. The following week, Lucas called a meeting with all the mansion's employees. Donna Carmen, Jessica, Marcos, Elisa, the gardener, the cleaning lady from the bedroom wing, the driver, Enrique's nurse. He gathered them all in the living room, the Montero family's living room, where the servants never entered except to clean. Helena watched from the doorway with a stony expression. Lucas was direct. "From today onwards, you will all have an hour for lunch with a meal served. No leftovers. A proper meal. Just like ours. The same food with the same ingredients. Anyone working more than 10 hours will receive overtime pay. Anyone who wants to study will have support for it. I personally will create a fund to pay for courses in college for those who work here. And from today onwards, each of your names will be treated with the same respect as any other person in this family." The silence was absolute. Donna Carmen seemed to be swallowing a whole lemon. Jessica stared at the ground. The gardener's eyes were moist. Elisa didn't cry. She was beyond tears. She was in a place where the emotion is so intense that the body doesn't know how to express it. Helena left through the door without saying a word. Raphael, who had been watching from afar, sent a message to his mother. "Your son has gone mad," Helena replied. "I'll take care of it." But she didn't take care. Because that same night, Enrique called Lucas into the room. He was lucid, one of the rare moments of clarity that the illness still allowed. And he said something Lucas didn't expect. "Your mother told me what you did." "Dad, Don't interrupt me. She told me and she's furious. But I want you to know something." Enrique coughed. His eyes, deep in their sockets, still held the sharp intelligence of someone who had built an empire. "I built all this from nothing. I was poor, Lucas. Your mother doesn't know this, or pretends not to know. I grew up in a house without a floor, eating what was available, wearing other people's clothes. I built all this, and in the process, forgot where I came from. I forgot that I was once the one who ate the leftovers." Lucas sat on the edge of the bed. "That girl," Enrique continued, "the one your mother wants to get rid of? What's her name?" "Elisa." "Elisa." He repeated the name as if savoring it. "Tell me about her." And Lucas spoke. He spoke about the leftovers in the kitchen, about the book in the garden, about the interrupted college studies, about the silent dignity of a woman who endured what no one should endure and still found beauty in forgotten books. He spoke more than he intended. He spoke with an emotion he didn't know he possessed. And when he finished, Enrique was smiling. A tired, sickly, but genuine smile. "You like her?" Lucas did not respond. "You like her," Enrique repeated, and it wasn't a question. "And that scares you because she's not what they expected you to choose. But let me tell you something I learned too late. People who eat in silence, who work without complaining, who read books alone in the dark, who cry without making a sound, those people are made of something money can't buy and that most rich people don't have. They're made of truth. And truth is the rarest thing in the world." Enrique closed his eyes. "Don't let your mother decide what is worthy. She's a good woman, but she confuses value with price. They are very different things." Lucas left his father's room and felt something had been unlocked inside him. A permission he didn't know he needed. Not his father's permission. His own permission. Permission to feel what he already felt and to stop pretending it was just compassion, just social justice, just class consciousness. It was more. It had always been more. From the first night he saw her eating in the dark, it had always been more. The next day, he looked for her. Not in the hallway, not in the kitchen, not at the safe distance of the last few months. He looked for her in the back garden, where he knew she would be during her break, sitting on the crate with a book. "Elisa." She looked up, and she saw in him something she hadn't seen before, a vulnerability, an openness, a man who was no longer the heir, nor the boss, nor the doctor, a man who was afraid. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to listen to me until the end." She closed the book. When I saw you that night, eating in the kitchen, I thought it was pity, that I felt sorry for you, and for a while I convinced myself of it because pity is safe. Pity demands nothing. Pity is looking down and feeling good about looking. But it wasn't pity. It never was. He took a deep breath. I see you, Elisa. Not the way you see someone on the street. I see the person who wakes up at 5 in the morning and doesn't complain, who endures verbal abuse all day and still reads Jane Austen at night, who cries alone and then wipes away the tears and carries on. I see a person who is made of something I don't have, something I admire, and I don't know what to do with it because my mother thinks you're irrelevant, and my whole world has been built on this idea that certain people don't matter, but you matter. You matter to me. And I needed to say this, even if it doesn't change anything. Elisa remained silent for a long time. The wind carried the scent of soap from the clotheslines. A bird sang somewhere. The world kept turning, indifferent to what was happening between two human beings sitting on wooden crates in the backyard of a mansion. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm, firmer than any Lucas had ever heard. You know what's hardest? It's not being invisible. You get used to that. The hardest part is when someone sees you and then disappears. Because then you know what you're missing. Before, I didn't know. Now I do. And that hurts more than ever having been seen. I'm not going to disappear. Go ahead. Because your mother will take care of it. Because that's how the world works. Because I am me and you are you. What if I don't accept that? It's not a matter of acceptance. It's a matter of reality. Then let's change reality. Elisa let out a laugh. Not of joy, but of disbelief. The laugh of someone who has heard something so improbable that it's almost funny. You don't change reality with good intentions, Lucas. I know that better than anyone. Good intentions don't pay the bills, they don't stop prejudice, they don't make a mother of an heir except the kitchen helper. I'm not talking about good intentions. I'm talking about decision. And then he did something she didn't expect. He reached out his hand. The same hand he had reached out that day in the kitchen when she was kneeling on the floor picking up carpaccio. The same hand she had refused. This time, he said, I accept. Elisa looked at his hand. She looked at his face. She looked at the sky, as if asking permission from the universe. And then, slowly, as if touching something fragile, she placed her hand in his. Her hand was rough. His was soft. And the contrast between them said everything about their lives. But the way they fit together, their fingers intertwining as if they'd done it 1,000 times before, said everything about what could be. In the months that followed, everything changed, and nothing changed. Helena did what Helena did. Manipulated, pressured, threatened. She tried to convince Lucas that he was making a mistake he would regret. She tried to hire a suitable young woman to introduce to her son, daughters of businessmen, lawyers, heiresses. Lucas refused them all. Helena tried to fire Elisa. Lucas said that if Elisa left, he would leave too. Helena said it was blackmail. Lucas said it was consistency. Raphael was making jokes about Cinderella, about soap operas, about his brother who was embarrassing the family. Lucas ignored them. Elisa listened and swallowed it, because some things change slowly, and the cruelty of others is one of them. Donna Carmen's condition worsened. She began treating Elisa with such a cutting coldness that the air froze when the two were in the same room. She no longer shouted. To shout would be to acknowledge Elisa's existence in a way that Donna Carmen refused to accept. She simply acted as if Elisa were a stain on the wall. She gave orders without looking at her. She referred to her as that one over there when speaking to others. And Elisa? Elisa continued. She continued waking up at 5:30. She continued chopping vegetables, washing pots, scrubbing floors. She continued being the last to leave. But now she read books from the library without hiding. Now she ate at the servants' table, real food, not leftovers. Now she looked at people when she spoke, instead of looking at the floor. Small changes. Invisible to those who didn't pay attention, enormous to those who knew where she came from. Lucas took her out to dinner for the first time on a Saturday. Not to an expensive restaurant, to a simple pizzeria, the kind with checkered tablecloths and cheap bottles of wine. Elisa was so nervous she barely ate. Didn't you like the pizza? He asked. I've never eaten out with anyone. Never? Never. Lucas felt something break inside him, not from sadness, but from a gentle anger directed at the world that had denied such an extraordinary woman something as simple as dinner at a pizzeria. So this is the first of many, he said, and Elisa smiled. This time, a real smile. Open, disarming, whole. A smile that changed her face in a way Lucas wasn't prepared to witness. Because when Elisa truly smiled, something happened. The face that no one would describe as beautiful became the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. It was a smile that came from within, from a place that life had tried to destroy but couldn't, and that smile carried so much light that it illuminated not only her, but everything around her. Lucas looked at her and thought, This is it. This is the woman. This is the life. This is what I want. Elisa looked at him and thought, I'm afraid. And for the first time, the fear isn't of being hurt. The fear is of being happy. There was one night, weeks after the pizzeria incident, when Elisa almost left. Not the mansion, the story, the possibility. Everything that was blossoming between her and Lucas, something that scared her more than any scream from Donna Carmen. It happened after a Sunday when Helena organized a brunch for her friends. 12 women, wearing discreet jewelry and with outspoken opinions, sat on the veranda with champagne and fruit, talking about children, travels, and employees, as if they were talking about the weather. Elisa was serving that day because Jessica was absent. It was the first time since everything had begun that Elisa had had to directly serve Helena's family in the presence of guests. Helena didn't introduce her. She didn't look at her. She treated her as she always had, like an extension of the furniture, but one of her friends, a woman named Beatrice, looked at Elisa with more attention than usual. And when Elisa moved away to get more juice, Beatrice leaned towards Helena and said, in a voice not as low as she had imagined, "Helena, is this the girl Lucas is dating?" The silence that fell over the balcony was deafening. Elisa was 3 meters away, holding the jug of orange juice, and she heard every syllable. She heard Helena laugh, a short, sharp laugh, the laugh of someone who cuts. "Don't be absurd, Beatrice. Lucas isn't dating anyone from the kitchen. He's just too kind for his own good, that's all. You know those guys who come back from Europe with ideas. It'll pass." Elisa returned to the balcony with the pitcher. She poured each glass without spilling a drop. She smiled when she needed to smile. She said, "Excuse me," when she needed to say. And when she finished, she went into the kitchen, placed the pitcher on the counter, and stood there, looking at her own hands, feeling the weight of that laugh, not cruel, but worse than cruel. Indifferent. The laugh of someone who doesn't even consider the possibility real. The laugh of someone who finds the idea so absurd that it's comical. That night, Elisa didn't go down to the kitchen. She didn't eat. She lay down in the tiny room she occupied in the servants' quarters and stared at the ceiling. She thought about everything Helena had said without knowing she was listening. She thought that perhaps Helena was right, that perhaps it was just kindness that would pass, that perhaps she was building castles in the sand and that the next wave would wash it all away. She thought about stopping, about becoming invisible again, about returning the books, refusing the plates, lowering her eyes. It would be easier. It would be safer. It would be less painful when it was all over. The next morning, he arrived in the kitchen earlier than usual, 4:40 in the morning. The sky was still dark. He entered through the back door, turned on the light, fastened his apron, and began to work. He chopped onions. Lots of onions. And whether the tears streaming down his face were from the onions or something else, no one would ever know, because no one was there to see. Lucas noticed the change. That day when he crossed paths with Elisa in the hallway, she looked away. Not angrily, protectively, with the same protectiveness of someone who picks up something fragile before it breaks. He waited. He didn't pressure her. He had learned in those months living with Elisa that she opened up in her own time, like certain flowers that only bloom when the sun hits them at the right angle. Forcing her to open would be to destroy her. 2 days passed. On the 3rd day, Lucas went down to the kitchen in the afternoon, a time when he didn't usually appear, and found Elisa alone, peeling cassava. He sat on the stool without saying anything. He stayed there, present. After 10 minutes of silence, Elisa spoke without stopping her peeling. "Your mother told her friends that there's nothing between us, that it's just your kindness, and that it will pass." Lucas remained quiet. "And I kept thinking," Elisa continued, the knife slicing firmly into the brown bark, "that maybe she's right, that maybe this is just a phase, that maybe you'll wake up one day and realize that I am what I am, and that what I am isn't enough for what you need. And what do you think I need? Someone who won't make your mother's friends laugh." Lucas remained silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but it carried a weight that Elisa felt deeply. "When I lived in London, I used to have dinners with people from European high society, bankers, heirs, diplomats, beautiful, educated women who spoke 3 languages and wore clothes that cost what a teacher earns in a year. And I would look at them and feel nothing. Such a great emptiness that I would go home and stare at the wall." He paused. "Then I come back to Brazil and see a woman eating leftovers alone in the dark, and I feel more than I felt in 4 whole years in Europe. Do you really think this is just a phase?" Elisa stopped peeling. The knife hung suspended in midair. "I think," she said slowly, "that you can feel all of this and still leave one day." "I can," he admitted, "but I won't." "How do you know?" Because I've already tried. I tried to stop going downstairs at night. I tried to stop thinking about you. I tried to convince myself it was just a phase, that it was just what my mother says. And it didn't work. Nothing worked. You're inside me in a way I can't control and don't want to control. Elisa looked at him. She looked for a long time. She searched for lies. She searched for exaggeration. She searched for any sign that those words were just words. She found none. And that scared her more than anything, because it meant she would have to do the hardest thing in her life. Believe. I'm scared, she said. Me too. You shouldn't be afraid. You're a Montero. Montero is a surname. Fear is human. And I am human, Elisa. Before being Montero, before being an heir, before anything else, I am human. And humans are afraid, especially when they find something worthwhile. Elisa resumed peeling the cassava, but something in the rhythm had changed. The knife went down more lightly, her shoulders were less tense, and when Lucas got up to leave, she said, without raising her eyes, "Lucas, try? Thank you for not leaving when I asked you to." He smiled, and he left. There was also the night Elisa found Helena in the kitchen. Not the usual Helena, Helena without her armor. It happened without planning, as the most important things often do. Helen had had a bad day. Enrique was worse, the nurse had been direct for the first time, and Helena, who controlled everything around her so she wouldn't have to deal with what she felt inside, broke down. Not in front of anyone. Helena Montero would never break down in front of anyone. She broke down in the kitchen at midnight. The same time Elisa usually came downstairs. Elisa entered and found Helena sitting at the servants' table, the table Helena had never used, with a glass of water in her hand and red eyes. She wasn't crying. She was at that point after crying, when the body still trembles but the tears have already dried. They looked at each other. It was the most uncomfortable moment of both their lives. Elisa could have turned around. She could have pretended not to see. She could have respected the hierarchy that dictated that maids should not witness the weakness of their employers. But she did none of that. She did what she did best. She stayed. Without saying a word, she heated water. She made tea, chamomile, which was all she had. She placed the cup in front of Helena with the same delicacy with which she arranged the porcelain plates, and she sat down on the other side of the table. Helena held the cup with both hands. She took a sip and said, looking at the tea, not at Elisa, "He's going to die." It wasn't a question. It was the first time Helena had said that out loud. "I know," said Elisa, because she knew, everyone knew, but no one said anything. "I don't know who I am without him." Helena's voice was unrecognizable, without the armor, without the veneer, raw. "I spent 30 years being Enrique Montero's wife. Before that, I was someone's daughter. Before that, I was someone's student. I was never just me." Elisa listened. She didn't answer, because there was no answer. But she listened with her whole body, with her full attention, with the same attention she used to read, to peel, to eat in the dark, a total attention that is the rarest form of respect. Helena drank all the tea. When she finished, she looked at Elisa for the first time, really looked and said, "This tea was good. It's chamomile. I know what chamomile is." And there was something new in Helena's tone. It wasn't kindness. It wasn't acceptance. It was the reluctant recognition that the woman sitting across from her and the kitchen helper she considered irrelevant had just done something none of her discreetly jeweled friends had done. Stay, silently, without judging, without asking for anything in return. Helena got up, put the cup on the table, and left the kitchen without saying anything more. But the next day, for the first time in 3 years, she passed through the kitchen and said, "Good morning," looking in Elisa's direction. Not to Elisa, in Elisa's direction. It was little, it was almost nothing. But almost nothing, for someone who has never had anything, is a lot. There was also the afternoon when Lucas took Elisa to visit her mother. Donna Maria lived in a 2-room house in the Jardim Esperanza neighborhood. A pretty name for a place that had no garden and where hope was just a decorative word. The house was clean and organized, with the meticulousness of someone who has little and takes care of everything. There was a flower pot on the windowsill, dish towels hanging on the wall with embroidered flowers, an old radio playing soft country music. Donna Maria looked at Lucas as one might look at a Martian. She served coffee in mismatched cups and offered him cassava flour biscuits that she had made herself. They sat down in the living room, if one could call that space, which contained a sofa, a small table, and a small shrine with a plaster saint, a living room. Lucas ate 3 cassava flour biscuits. He said they were the best he'd ever eaten. Donna Maria was suspicious. Then she realized he was serious. Then she cried. Because there's something devastating about kindness when it appears in places where no one expects it. "My daughter deserves all the best," said Donna Maria, looking at Lucas with eyes that were the same as Elisa's, large, brown, and full of unspoken things. "She's the best person I know. She dropped out of college to help me when I got sick. She works all day to pay my bills. She never complains. She never asks for anything. She seems strong, but inside she's made of glass. And if you break that glass, I swear to God that... Mother! Elisa interrupted, mortified. Let me speak, daughter. Donna Maria didn't take her eyes off Lucas. If you hurt her, I'll know. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many houses, how many farms. No amount of money in the world protects a man from an angry mother. Lucas didn't laugh. He didn't find it funny. He looked at Donna Maria with a seriousness that Elisa had never seen in him and said, Mrs. Maria, I can't promise I'll never make a mistake. Because I'm human, and humans make mistakes. But I can promise I'll try. Every day, I strive to be worthy of the daughter you raised. Because you raised someone extraordinary, and I am aware of that. Donna Maria remained silent. Then she nodded once and served more coffee. And when Lucas asked for more cassava flour biscuits, she smiled, and Elisa saw that her mother had made up her mind. She had approved. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Donna Maria truly understood. She had washed clothes her whole life for rich people and could distinguish from a distance who was pretending and who wasn't. Lucas wasn't pretending. On the way back to the mansion in the car, Elisa remained silent for a long time. Then she said, You ate 5 tapioca biscuits. 6. I ate one secretly while you went to the bathroom. Were they good? They were the best I've ever eaten. I'm serious. Me too. Your mother makes better tapioca biscuits than any bakery in London. Elisa laughed. A short, incredulous, beautiful laugh. And then she became serious again. Thank you, she said, for going, for eating the cookie, for listening to my mother threaten you without laughing. Your mother is terrifying. She's wonderful. She is both, Lucas said, looking at Elisa, like her daughter. Weeks accumulated like layers of paint on a canvas. Each day added something, a conversation, a gesture, a shared silence, and the image that formed was more complex and more beautiful than either of them could have imagined at the beginning. It wasn't a movie romance. There were no violins, no rain, no races through the airport. There was a man learning to be honest and a woman learning to be seen, and between them something that grew slowly with deep roots like a tree that knows it will face storms and therefore firmly plants itself in the ground before rising to the sky. Enrique died on a Sunday morning, with the sun streaming through his bedroom window. He died holding Lucas's hand. He died with a tired smile and his eyes closed, like someone who has finally found a door they've been searching for a long time. His last words, spoken that night. Earlier, in a moment of lucidity, he said to Lucas, Don't confuse assets with inheritance. Assets are what you can count in numbers. Inheritance is what you can count in character. The funeral was grand, like everything in the Montero family's life. Hundreds of people, imported flowers, speeches, measured tears. Helena dressed in black and fulfilled her role with the same perfection with which she organized dinners. Raphael appeared sober for the first time in months, and no one knew if it was out of respect or surprise. Elisa didn't go to the funeral. It wasn't her place, or at least that's what everyone would think. She stayed in the kitchen, preparing the food for the wake, chopping the same vegetables as always, washing the same pots as always. But he did everything with special care that day, because that food was for the farewell of a man who, at the end of his life, had recognized her worth. A man who never called her by name, but who told his son that she was made of real things. When everyone had left and the house was quiet again, Lucas went down to the kitchen. He found Elisa finishing putting away the last serving dish. His eyes were red, his suit was wrinkled, his hair was out of place. He looked like a boy lost in a man's body. He said nothing. He simply sat down on the creaky stool, her stool, and stayed there. Elisa sat down on the floor next to him. She rested her head on his knee, and she stayed there. They stayed like that for a long time, in the same place where it had all begun, in the kitchen where she ate leftovers in silence, in the kitchen where he had first seen her, in the kitchen that was the humblest place in the richest house in the city and which, at that moment, was the only place in the world that mattered. After Enrique's death, the reading of the will brought surprises. Most of the estate was divided between Lucas and Raphael, as expected. Helena received the mansion and a lifetime annuity, but there was a clause that no one expected. An educational fund, created by Enrique in the last weeks of his life, intended to finance university studies for all Montero family employees who wished to study. The fund was named Fundo Recomeço, Rebirth Fund, and its first designated beneficiary was, by name, Elisa Ribeiro Gomez, a kitchen assistant. Helen read the clause 3 times. Raphael didn't read it. He was on his cell phone. Lucas read it and felt his eyes burn because he understood that his father had heard every word of that conversation in the room and had acted. Silently, in the same way that Elisa acted, without fanfare, without spectacle, with the dignity of someone who does the right thing simply because it is the right thing to do. Elisa learned about the fund from the family lawyer, who summoned her to his office with a formality that panicked her. When he explained, she remained silent for so long that the lawyer asked if she was all right. "I am," said Elisa. I need a minute." The lawyer left the room. Elisa was alone. And then, for the second time in her life, she cried in a way that wasn't silent. She cried loudly, she cried deeply. She cried everything she had kept inside. She cried for her adolescence without books, for her interrupted college education, for the nights eating leftovers, for the mornings carrying boxes, for the afternoons of humiliation, for the years of invisibility. She cried because a man she had never called by name had called hers. He had written her name on a document that was worth more than she ever imagined it would be worth. Elisa Ribeiro Gomez, her name, in a place that mattered. She returned to the Faculty of Literature the following semester. The mornings continued early. She hadn't quit her job because she needed to and because she wanted to, but now the afternoons were hers. She sat in the classrooms with the same attention she used to eat her leftovers, silent, focused, with a kind of gratitude that the other students, younger and more confident, didn't understand. The teachers noticed. There was something about that 25-year-old woman with rough hands and large eyes that stood out. It wasn't brilliance, it was hunger. Hunger to learn, hunger to be. On the first day of class, Elisa arrived half an hour early. She sat in the last row next to the wall as if she wanted to be present without being noticed. An old habit. She had bought a new notebook with the first adjusted salary that Lucas had implemented for all employees. A simple, hard-covered blue notebook. She opened it to the first page and stared at the blank paper with the same reverence with which she looked at the books in the library. The other students entered in groups, laughing, chatting about parties, tests, and teachers. They had colorful backpacks, laptops, and wireless headphones. Elisa had her blue notebook and a pen. When the Brazilian literature teacher entered and asked them to introduce themselves, each student said their name, age, and where they were from. When it was Elisa's turn, she said her name and age, and when the teacher asked what she did for a living, she told the truth. "I work as a kitchen assistant." There was a brief silence, not of judgment, more of surprise. Most of those students had never sat next to a kitchen assistant in a classroom. Elisa sensed the silence and held it. She didn't lower her eyes. She didn't apologize. She said what she was, and was at peace with what she said. The teacher, a gray-haired woman named Celia, who had published 3 books of poetry and had been teaching for 30 years, looked at Elisa with an interest she didn't show to the other students. Not pity, interest. The interest of someone who recognizes a story before it's even told. The weeks at university transformed Elisa in ways she didn't fully understand. Each class was a door, each text she read was a window. She discovered that the things she felt, the loneliness, the invisibility, the hunger for belonging, had names in literature. Entire pages were dedicated to them. Writers from centuries ago had felt what she felt and transformed it into art. And this discovery, that her suffering wasn't unique, that it was part of something bigger, something human and universal, was as liberating as the first note on the cloth napkin. One day, Professor Celia asked for an essay on the concept of invisibility in the work of Clarice Lispector. Elisa wrote 10 pages, not because she wanted to impress, because she couldn't stop. The words flowed as if they had waited years to be written. She wrote about Macabea, the character from The Hour of the Star, and while writing, she realized she was writing about herself, about every woman who silently eats leftovers, about every person who exists on the margins and carries within themselves a world that no one bothers to get to know. Professor Celia returned the essay with a single note in the corner of the last page. "This is not an academic paper. It's a confession of humanity. Highest grade." Elisa kept that essay in the same place where she kept Lucas's note, between the pages of Bronte's book. 2 written things that had changed her life, one by a man who saw her, the other by herself, finally seeing herself. Lucas and Elisa built something, slowly. There were no grand declarations. There was no cinematic proposal. There were dinners at pizzerias. There were afternoons in the backyard, each with a book, reading side by side in silence. There were late-night conversations in the kitchen, now with the light on, now without hiding. There was the first time he held her face in his hands and kissed her, a kiss so careful it seemed he was afraid of breaking something. There was the first time she said, "I love you," and her voice trembled so much the words almost fell before reaching his ear. Helena never fully accepted it. But time and Elisa's constant presence, her quiet firmness, her refusal to be anything other than herself, her unwavering dignity, eroded Helena's resistance like water on stone. There wasn't a moment of acceptance. There was a slow surrender. Helena stopped making comments. She stopped introducing suitable young ladies. He stopped calling Elisa the young lady and began calling her by her name. He started asking about college. Once, at a Christmas dinner, he passed her the rice dish and said, "Thank you." And that single word coming from Helena Montero was worth more than any speech of acceptance. Raphael never changed. But Raphael didn't matter. There were people like that, existing on the fringes of others' transformation, immune to growth, comfortable in their own stagnation. Elisa learned not to be hurt by him. She learned that Raphael's contempt was directed at Raphael, not at her. Donna Carmen resigned. She said she couldn't work under those conditions, the conditions being that of a former assistant who was now treated as a person. Nobody missed her. The kitchen felt lighter without her, like a house feels lighter when a window is opened. 2 years later, Elisa graduated with a degree in literature. The graduation ceremony was held in a noisy gymnasium, with hundreds of graduates and their families, the music too loud and the speeches too long. Elisa was in the third row, her cap crooked and her eyes shining. Her mother, Donna Maria, a small woman with hands even rougher than her daughter's, who had worked as a laundress since she was 14, was in the audience, crying uncontrollably, without silence, with the scandalous joy of someone who had never had to learn to contain her emotions. Lucas was beside Donna Maria, not in the VIP box, not separated, right beside her, holding a bouquet of simple flowers, daisies, because Elisa had once mentioned that they were her favorite flowers, in a conversation she herself had forgotten but which he had kept. When Elisa's name was called, Elisa Ribeiro Gomez, and she went up on stage to receive her diploma, Lucas felt the same thorn he had felt that first night, when he saw her eating leftovers in the dark. But now the thorn was of something else. It was pride. It was admiration. It was the kind of love that isn't shouted, that isn't shown off, that doesn't need a stage. The kind of love that is felt in the hands when they hold a bouquet of daisies for someone who deserves the whole world. Elisa stepped down from the stage, found Lucas and Donna Maria. She hugged her mother first, because it was only right, because Donna Maria had washed clothes so that Elisa could exist, because before any book, before any library, before any heir who saw her in the dark, there was a small woman who washed other people's clothes and said every night, "Study, my daughter, study, because studying is the only thing that no one can take away from you." Then she hugged Lucas, a long, tight hug, the kind of hug that holds within it all the hugs that haven't been given. He buried his face in her hair, which smelled of cheap shampoo and book paper, and said softly, so only she could hear, "I said I was going to fix a few things." "You didn't fix it," she replied, also quietly. "You only opened the door. I was the one who came in." And he laughed, and she laughed. And Donna Maria looked at the two of them, not understanding why they were laughing, but laughing too, because the joy of children is contagious, even when inexplicable. That night after graduation, Lucas and Elisa went to the mansion. Not through the back door, through the front door. Elisa entered as she had never entered before, through the main room, passing through the marble hall and up the central staircase. Lucas led her to the library. They sat down in the leather armchairs. Elisa took off the high heels she had bought for graduation, which were killing her. Lucas poured 2 glasses of wine, an expensive red, the kind Elisa would have served on a tray without ever tasting it. "Do you know what the first book I picked up here was?" she said. "Persuasion," she smiled. "You remember? I remember everything." Elisa looked around the library, the dark wood bookshelves, the sliding staircase, the smell of old books. Everything was exactly as she had imagined. On the first night, she had entered there, like a thief, with her heart in her ears. But everything was different, because she was different. "You know what hurt me the most?" Elisa said, looking at her glass of wine. "It wasn't the humiliation, it wasn't the hard work, it wasn't eating leftovers. What hurt the most was believing that I deserved it, that that was my place, that I was made for that and nothing else. The worst kind of prison isn't the one with bars, it's the one inside your head." Lucas held her hand. "And now? Now I know I didn't deserve it, and I know nobody deserves it." She paused. "And I know that sometimes all it takes is one person seeing you, just one, for everything to change. You found yourself alone, Elisa. I just opened the door." "No, you did more. You told me I deserved to eat like a human being, not like a shadow." Her voice trembled. "I kept that note. I still keep it. I know. You know? It's between pages 56 and 57 of Bronte's book. I saw it when I put the book back on the shelf." Elisa looked at him and felt so many things at once that her whole body trembled. Love, gratitude, fear, hope, all together, all mixed up, all impossible to separate. "Lucas, try. Thank you for coming down that night to get water." "I didn't go down to get water, I know, but thank you anyway." They stayed in the library until dawn. They didn't do anything extraordinary. They read, they talked, they were silent. They fell asleep in the armchairs, each with a book in their lap, like 2 children who had played until they couldn't anymore. When the sun streamed through the tall windows and illuminated the shelves laden with stories, Elisa woke up first. She looked at Lucas, sleeping. She looked at her own hands. Hands that had peeled potatoes, picked up carpaccio from the floor, held books in the dark. Rough hands, strong hands. Hands that now held a diploma. Hands that could now reach things that had previously seemed impossible. She stood up silently, went to the bookshelf, and found Wuthering Heights, the worn paperback she had brought from home, which now occupied a place among the 2,000 volumes in the Montero library. She opened it to pages 56 and 57, and there was the note, in firm handwriting, slightly slanted to the right. You deserve to eat like a human being, not like a shadow. Elisa clutched the note to her chest. She looked out the window. The sun was rising over the back garden, the same garden where she sat on wooden crates, where she read old second-hand books, where a man who should have been everything she wasn't sat beside her and asked her what she liked. Outside, the world remained the world, unfair, unequal, full of dark kitchens where invisible women silently eat leftovers, full of mansions where the names of servants are forgotten before they are learned, full of Helenas who confuse value with price and of Raphaels who confuse cruelty with humor, full of chasms between those who have and those who don't, between those who are seen and those who are not, but also full of unlocked libraries, of notes on cloth napkins, of hands extended for the second time, of fathers writing names in wills, of mothers washing clothes so their daughters can study, of pizzerias with checkered tablecloths where you dine for the first time, of early mornings when someone goes down to the kitchen not to get water, but to find the person they didn't know they were looking for. Elisa tucked the return ticket between pages 56 and 57. She closed the book. She went back to her armchair, and when Lucas woke up minutes later, the first thing he saw was her face. And on her face, her smile. That smile that wasn't beautiful on the outside, but on the inside. That smile that illuminated. That smile that was made of everything she had survived and everything she would become. He smiled back. And that morning, in that library full of books, silence, and sunshine, two people whom the world had tried to keep apart, through money, class, contempt, and custom, were together. Not because life had been fair, not because love conquers all, not because there is poetic justice in suffering, but because sometimes one person sees another person in the dark. And that vision changes everything. Not the world, not the system, not the structures, but the story of two lives. And two lives, seen up close, are worth the whole world. Elisa never ate leftovers in silence again, but he kept the creaky stool. He stored it in the corner of the library, next to the leather armchair, as a reminder. A reminder of where you came from, of who you were when no one was looking, of who you chose to be when someone finally saw you. And every night, before going to sleep, she would run her fingers over the note between pages 56 and 57, because there are phrases that we read once and carry with us forever. Phrases that are not literature, not poetry, not philosophy. They are simply the truth, spoken by someone who cared at the exact moment we needed to hear it. You deserve to eat like a human being, not like a shadow. While Elisa, who was once a shadow, who was once invisible, who once believed that leftovers were all the world had in store for her, now knew that wasn't true. Now she knew, with the silent certainty of someone who carries the proof in their heart, that she deserved the whole table, and she sat there, every night, with her full name, with her face held high, with the hands that had built a new life upon the ruins of what the world had tried to destroy. Elisa Ribeiro Gomez, graduated, loved, seen, finally sight.